Thanks for tuning in and welcome back to the truck. Now that we've got the lower cabinets, the countertop, and the sink starting to take shape, the next step is the overhead cabinets. But before I can do the overhead cabinets, I need to build a top for this cabinet. The kitchen countertop is 48 inches wide. This cabinet is 12, which gives us an overall kitchen width of 60 inches. That fits perfectly with the two 30-inch cabinets overhead. Where things don't work quite perfectly is the height. The cabinets are also 15 inches high, which leaves me with about a 3 3/4 inch gap below the cabinet to the top of this one. So the plan to take care of that is to have a solid top on this cabinet with two 3-inch walls that'll allow us to have a drawer that fits in the middle underneath the upper 15-inch cabinet. Now, while this may seem to be a strange place to put a drawer, keep in mind that where I'm standing right now is where the bed will end up. So from the bed, we'll have access to a small drawer on the back side of the kitchen. In keeping with the materials that I've been using in the rest of the kitchen, I've just purchased a 12-inch wide melamine shelf that I'll cut down to fit the top of the cabinet. One other thing that I want to do before I start fitting this plate on top is actually remove the metal bars as I did on the lower cabinet. As we're not mounting a countertop on here, I want the edges to be completely flush. Easy enough. Just a couple screws and off they come. With the two top bars removed, I can start placing my components, starting with the top plate, which is 11 3/4 wide, not quite 12, and 24 3/8 long to be flush with the front of the cabinet. And then I've cut 3 pieces that are each 3 1/8 inches long. These are 3 slices of the same shelf material. And these are what's going to form the pocket where the drawer will go, which is also the support for the upper cabinet. That leaves me exactly 15 inches here, which is the size of the upper cabinet. Some of you will have noticed that that gives us an unfinished edge, not only on the front, but also on the back side. That's okay, because we have some edge finish. Comes on a roll, you cut it to size, and there's a special tool that you use to apply it. I believe it's called an iron. Is that like an iPhone? I didn't even know we had one of these. The instructions say to iron it on and then immediately press it down with a block of wood. I'm going to try using this roller that I have just because I have it. It says set to 400 degrees or cotton. There's a lot of controls on this thing, but I believe that's cotton. This is hit start. Iron says ready. Let's see if we can do this without burning my fingers. So I'm going to line up the close edge. I'm letting it overhang a little bit on the end. I have no idea how long it takes for the glue to... That's not looking good at all. That's just making a mess. Ooh. Well, it seems to have pressed it on, but it's pretty nasty. Mess of the front end of that. I don't know if that's just bad iron or see if that cleans off. It does seem to have stuck fairly well. It also says in the instructions that you can use a metal file to clean the edges up. So we'll see how that works next. Well, it kind of looks like adhesive that maybe came through. I'm wondering if I had it too hot. It does seem to come off. It doesn't come off super easy, but it does seem to come off. So I'm going to continue on with the assumption that I'll be able to get whatever that is off of there. And let's try resolving problem number 2. So I knew we were going to have too much on here. I'm wondering if I can get a rough cut of it. Yeah, there we go. Just kind of not trying to go right flush with the edge here. Just get the majority off, and then I'll do as the instructions suggest and finish it off with a file. That cuts pretty reasonably and it feels fairly strong. To be honest, it feels stronger than the rest of the stuff that's on here. And I'm not going to do the rest of this over top of the counter because I don't want to fill it with junk, but basically got my file here. It said file towards the edge. I'm assuming because you don't want to rip all the glue out. Well, that's pretty aggressive. I don't know if you can see, but right here, as I was going along with the knife, I kind of came up a bit and then down again. And that's where the file comes in perfectly, because if I tried to cut that little bit off just using the knife, I'd either not be able to get it, or more likely I would gouge in on one side or the other. I also found that going kind of more along the edge with the file as opposed to straight in. Going along the edge kind of gives you a more even finish. I think one of the keys is to know when to stop, because if you go too far, you end up filing through this really thin surface, and you can't undo that. I think that's working all right. Got this edge all done. Pretty good. Probably use a little bit more, and then I've got the whole upper ledge to do. Seems to work really well. Trimming the majority off with a knife, always pushing towards, not pulling away, because that's going to pull on the glue. Glue is pretty strong, and then just hitting the last little bit with a file comes out, I would say, reasonably well. I've got all the edges stuck on, trimmed down, so other than cleaning up a little bit of glue residue in a couple areas, these pieces are now ready to assemble. There's a couple different ways that I can go about the next steps. One, I can attach these 3 risers to this board from underneath, and then I can attach this board to the cupboard from on top. The problem with that method is if I want to get a screw in the back corner, these pieces block me from attaching this down. If I go that way, I can use some brackets on the inside of the cupboard to attach underneath, or I can start from the top and I can attach this first, and then I can secure these pieces from the bottom up, but that blocks me from securing this one. If I can get everything just right, what I might be able to do is attach this one to this first, but leave myself this little opening at the back to drive a screw through here. Then I can install the back plate afterwards and put screws up from the bottom. To start with, I'm going to drill 6 holes in the top plate, and those 6 will be what secures it to the top of the cabinet. These 4 are going to end up being underneath the inboard and outboard walls. And once I have those positioned, I'll drill 2 more holes to secure this piece, which is going to be the forward end, and that will get attached before this top plate goes on. But I want to do all the fitting to the top plate so that I can get the holes drilled into here and the holes drilled into here before I attach that piece, because once that's attached, it's going to be much more difficult to get these back to. And just like that, we've got 6 screws holding that top plate to the top cabinet. Now these front 2 screws here, which will be exposed, after this is all done, I will re-countersink these a little bit deeper. I've been reusing the screws that came out of the metal plates at the top, so I've got plenty of these nice little countersunk screws. And now I'm going to use 6 more of them to attach these little stub walls from underneath. So I've now effectively assembled this from the bottom upside down. When I flip it over, these 3 walls are now installed. The next step I need to do is actually remove this wall and this wall, which will give me access to the screws that are in these corners. I can then screw this whole assembly down and then reinstall those two walls with the screws from inside the cupboard. Now the last couple screws, even with the long bit, I'm probably not going to be able to reach. The one in this corner and the two underneath for the back wall are pretty close quarters. Luckily, I recently bought myself one of these that I used when I was mounting the kitchen to the floor. And I think that it'll have just as good a use here. Letting me get right up to the edge, a little bit of angle down. Let's see how this works. Perfect. That is exactly what that piece is designed to do. So I've got the 6 screws in from the top now. I'm going to go back to my short bit and I'm going to attach the front wall from the inside. That's the rear wall. This is the, I'm sure I put a, there it is. There's a little F on it. So now I just got to get everything lined up with the screws that are inside here. The alignment of this one is critical in that it's the width. And if I get the width wrong, the drawer won't go in and out properly. Right. Ooh. Right there. And now I need my special angle adapter and my long bit again to get at the most difficult ones in the very back corner of the cupboard. And I should probably put this into place as best I can before I start. This is not going to be easy. This cupboard's not wide enough to get enough arms in. Oh, maybe. I think it's time to test fit the first cabinet and see how those measurements worked out. Now, these two cabinets together are not going to be easy to lift into place at the same time, but I do have to attach them together. So what I'm hoping to do is set it up so that I can have this cabinet up here supported and have a space to slide the second cabinet in. I am going to have to do all the pre-work to join them together, but I don't think I'll try and put them in place as one large unit. It looks like we've got this the stage it needs to be. We're going to be sitting right about there. So I need to create a support from the countertop because this has got a little bit of a sag in it, understandably, and then a second support over here. This one will be shared between the two so that I can slide that second cabinet in there, secure it to this one, and then secure it to the end wall. Before I start bolting these two cabinets together, I do need to take one more thing into consideration. Because these are overhead cabinets, the doors open this way, and we have lift assist hinges, which are massive. So these hinges fit in here, and I need to make sure that where I decide to drill the holes to secure the two cabinets together doesn't interfere with where these hinges get mounted. That said, positioning the hinges is pretty straightforward in IKEA fashion. They've got little bumps on the top and this little jig on the front. It sets everything in the right place. You drop 3 screws into the mounting holes and drive them in. For 3 of the 4 holes, I'm going to be using the same type of hardware as I used to attach the lower cabinets together. That's a fairly flat-headed Allen bolt with a thread-in, threaded insert. I'll be using these for the 3 that are not behind the hinge, but because the area behind the hinge has a flat plate right up against it, I'll end up using some countersunk screws, probably 2 from each side, and they'll be the last ones to go in after the cabinets are in place before I mount the hinges. Next, I've put a piece of cardboard on top of the butcher block to give it a little bit of protection. And I'm going to use some leftover pieces of our house to make some supports. I'll need to build this up a little bit more, but it's a good starting point. Gets me about 95% of the way to where I need to be. Supports are in place, the cabinets are drilled. Let's see if everything fits like it should. Cabinet number 1, which is the one that has the threaded inserts pushed into it. Bring that most of the way up there and then over. All right, so my height works over there. Just gotta get it back and that way a little. All right, I think I gotta move this over just a little bit. There we go. Glad I have that cardboard on the countertop there. So that's just got a little bit of weight on there. Now we should be able to put the second one up. So again, you can see these have the threaded insert so that I can bolt through from the other side. I've left the one out where the hinge goes. On the opposite end of the other upper cabinet, I've put 4 holes so that I can put some screws through into the wall. All right. Okay, I'm going to need to clamp these together to get them lined up properly. And then it looks like I'm going to need to lift this end just a little bit more. But very roughly, that's where those 2 cabinets should fit. Before I get any further, I'm going to clamp these together so that they stay at the right height. And everything should line up when I put these bolts in. Right about there. One at the bottom and I'll put one at the top as well. That should hold things exactly where they need to be while I put these screws in. I guess really they're bolts, aren't they? Look at that, started there. And those should now be 1 cabinet. To close up the gap up here, I'm going to add 2 small pieces of masonite that are about 1/8 of an inch thick each. Take the styrofoam out, slip that whole package in as one, and that gives me a nice tight fit to the ceiling there. I'm also going to clamp the cupboards to the wall so that I can make sure that everything stays where it's supposed to be. That's nice and tight back to the edge, as is that end. So now I can put a couple screws in here. I'm using countersunk screws here because remember, this is going to be behind the hinge. So that's nice and flush and it won't interfere with the hinge. Gonna get another one in here at the bottom. And the last two holes as well. I think you get the idea. With everything secured, hopefully, we can take the supports out. Now I know I've got no weight left on this one, and that's a good sign because that means this connection is supporting itself. So getting rid of the center. And then, fingers crossed, I can get rid of the end without the whole thing falling down. This one's gonna be a little trickier because it's forced in there. Oh, that was tight in there. Oh, that's really tight. I guess I don't have the play that I had in there before to get this apart. Ugh. There we go. Well, it hasn't fallen down yet. Okay, the only thing left holding everything in place, if the screws aren't, would be the clamps. Let's see what happens. Nothing there, no change. No change there. 2 out of 3. Do we have a winner? That is now held there completely on its own. This kitchen is getting so big, the only way I can get the whole thing in one shot is taking the camera outside of the camper box. I hope you enjoyed that video, and if you did, consider giving us a thumbs up and maybe subscribe if you haven't already. There's plenty more of this build to come. Don't forget to check the video description for the useful links, and maybe if there's an Amazon link in there, click it to help support this channel. Share the video if you think it'll help someone. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.